Okay, so welcome everybody. The way that we're going to run this session, which is the ITE session, so initial teacher education session, is that we're going to split it in half. Not just because you might get bored of one of our voices, but also because it's kind of fun to have both sides of the coin in terms of information. So I'm going to start off by taking us through the first part of the presentation. Then Geetha's going to take over for the second part, and then we'll both be involved in the Q&A side of things. So just to introduce myself, my name is Chris Green. I am one of the lecturers at Queen Margaret University. I input on all of the education courses that we run, and I am the program leader for the Education Studies primary course. Geetha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Geeta Marcus. I'm a senior lecturer, and like Chris, I work on the Education Studies primary program, but I also work on the Education Studies program, and I also work on the PGDE, that's the postgraduate teaching program. I also have another role. I'm the person for my SIMS that organizes all the school placements and the community-based placements, which I'm going to talk about in a little while as well. So a very warm welcome to all of you. Hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation.
Great, thank you very much. I should probably explain, Geetha and I are both former head teachers as well, so we kind of come at this with quite a range of experience from different backgrounds. So I'll just get us started. So first of all, welcome to Queen Margaret University. The first slide talks a little bit around what makes a good teacher, an overview of our courses, student experiences, why IT at QMU, and your questions. And that's how this presentation is going to run. And I think the first question is always an interesting one, especially with everything going on right now. What makes a good teacher? And obviously you can see our little cartoon there as well. How do you expect me to write with this? It doesn't have a USB port or a keyboard. Be interesting when we go back to schools to see how kids are going to manage readjusting to not quite being as digital as they will be at home, I would imagine. Now, theoretically, what's going to happen here is I'm going to click a magic button and this video is going to play.
Well, the most important thing which a teacher can do for you is to help you.
Is to really get them awake for their math lessons.
Have to be a little bit bossy, a little bit kind.
Give you confidence in like anything you didn't feel that good at and like made you feel like you can do it.
They know a lot of things about a lot of things. You don't want them to be too kind, or you have to make them too angry, because that means they won't be actually a proper teacher.
I think a teacher is important because without teachers then children wouldn't learn and then most adults would be quite stupid.
This is Mrs. Wilson, and she's got a dress on she's got a sparkly dress on, and she doesn't have much strictness, she only has a little bit. My favourite teacher is Miss Gilbert because she understands me.
I think people would like to be a teacher because they can have like a big brain.
Teachers should like kids because otherwise what's the point?
My message to people who are studying to be a teacher would be to keep studying and just go for it.
So the video talks a lot around, from a young person's perspective, what does make a good teacher, what they need in a teacher. Some of the best lines from it, and you can tell we've seen it a few times, is you need to be strict, you need to have some strictness, but not too much strictness. One of the young people goes on to draw a picture of their favourite teacher who has a very pretty dress and not too much strictness. They talk a lot around what makes lessons a little bit tricky, but also quite good fun to engage the young people. And they also talk about how they think that people should go into teaching because it helps them get big brains to learn lots of stuff as well. So there you go. Any of you who are on here who want to become a teacher, apparently we need to have very big brains, which is always lovely. But the kids say it in a much nicer way than I do. This is an overview of our Education Studies primary course, and Geetha will go on to do the same thing with regards to the Education Studies course. So you would start off at the beginning of your journey doing the Education Studies primary course. you have a mixture of your learning throughout the course, so lectures, seminars, various activities that we are doing, various coursework, and then you have your placements as well, which Geetha will explain in more detail as we go on. Once you've completed your course, you go into what's called your probation year. And this is really your year where you're kind of honing your skills. You know, you take the learning that you've got from university, the learning you've picked up from your practice, and you go out and you really give it a shot. You give it a good try for a year. You have a class, your probation year class. And once you complete that and complete the assessments that you do as you go along and go through the necessary process, which is very supported, you then go on to become fully qualified teachers and gain fully qualified teacher status, which is a fantastic qualification for a number of reasons, including the fact that it does open up doors for teaching internationally. It opens up opportunities in terms of progression through your teaching career, and it really does kind of be a very enjoyable career path ahead of you. The next slide just takes us into a little bit of detail around what's going on in the first year of the course. Now, for the first year of the course, the Education Studies Primary and the Education Studies cohort are mixed together, so they follow the same thing. So this is relevant for both groups. The introduction to education studies is, as you'd expect, the theory behind education. You know, it's really getting into the nitty-gritty of the big players within the field of education and talking about why we educate in the way that we do, looking at curriculum for excellence. And it really does give you an overarching view of education in the 21st century. And Geetha's was the one who actually put this module together and can talk in some depth about how important this module, you know, it's like most people talk about how you can't really understand how to go forward without a little bit about where we've come from. And that's really pivotal in that module. Developing academic literacies for learning talks a lot about things to do with literacy, numeracy, data literacy, digital literacy, and that's really tying it back into the 21st century and about how things are developing. Introduction to psychology is, as it says on the tin, an introduction to psychology where you're in with some of the psychology students as well, and you're really getting a feel for the role that psychology plays, not just within education, within our society in general, but it's very important that we have an understanding of how young people learn, and that plays a key part in that. Learning through the lifespan module is very much, again, what it says on the tin, is about how we learn throughout our lifespan and looks at lots of different factors that are relevant. Sustainable human behaviour, I could talk about for about 3 hours because that's my module that I'm working on at the moment. And within that module, there are also other things that we do. We have our normal lectures, seminars, but there's a lot of outdoor activities that are built into that as well. And it's talking about our own sustainable human behaviour, which is relevant within the curriculum, and about how we encourage learners to become more sustainable. And then diversity, identity and well-being is an absolutely wonderful module that the students have thoroughly enjoyed being part of this semester, where they are looking at diversity, identity and well-being. And it's very holistic. The feedback from the students about that has been fantastic. I'll skim us to second year. I won't go into as much detail, but you can get a feel for the fact that what's happening here is that we are building up everyone's knowledge and understanding around every aspect of education. And whether you're doing the primary studies course or the education studies course, that learning is pivotal. To anyone who's going to go on to become an educator of any form, working in any education environment, needs to have a good understanding of those things. By the time we get to second year, the two courses split slightly and go off in slightly different directions for some of their learning, are still together for some learning as well. And for us, one of the choices that we made was that when it comes to placements, which again, Geetha will talk about in more detail, placements don't occur within the first year of the course. During the first year of the course, there is what's called a community-based education placement. So you do have some interaction in an education environment within your first year, but your formal education placements for those on the primary course begin in your second year. Again, Geetha will explain that in more depth. Third and fourth year, as you can see, by the time you get to fourth year, the number of modules are reducing as your learning is becoming more focused. Each module that we are working on and everything that we're doing really ticks all three of these boxes across the board. So for people who want to become educators in any form, be that teachers or working in charities or a vast array of things, the key elements that we need to develop over the course is the knowledge of curriculum content and subject matter. You need to know what you're going to teach. You need to know what you're doing when you go into the classroom. The how to teach. How do we go into a classroom and actually engage groups of students? Now, it could be that you're working within a primary classroom and have 25 to 30 young people. It could be that you go on to work in additional support needs and work with groups of 4 or 5 young people. It could be that you're working in a charity with young people who are not managing within other environments. And all of that really has the same purpose. At the end of the day, you need to develop the knowledge and the skills to actually deliver an education content. And then there's also the knowledge of learners. We don't live in a society where it's a level playing field and everyone comes to the classroom with the exact same life experiences and backgrounds, and everyone has different levels of abilities, everyone learns in different ways. So really, the course aims to try and make you as holistic an educator as possible, so that by the time you're in the classroom, you feel confident and competent to engage young people in the work that you're doing, okay? Now, I'm just going to skim us on to slide number 9, and I'm going to hand over to Geeta.
Thanks, Chris. What I'm going to do actually is, before I talk to you about the placements in schools, I'm just going to go back to that previous slide and just to recap. So if you're asking yourself at the moment, why should I come and do ITE? Why should I do education at Queen Margaret University? The one thing that comes to my mind straight away is that, having taught now at universities on education programs, the thing that's really good, I think, about where we are is that we sit within the division, within the Department of Psychology and Sociology and Education. So my colleagues and the people who will be teaching you on this program are not just teachers like myself in primary or secondary or with an education background. Many of my colleagues have in-depth knowledge and research into psychology and in sociology as well. So you really get a sense of a very well-rounded understanding of what it is to be an educator, what it is to be a teacher. You're getting a perspective. You're not just getting the pedagogical education perspective, you're getting a sociological perspective, and you're getting a psychological perspective as well, which, I mean, I wish I had that when I was training to be a teacher many, many years ago. So it's a really well thought out course. And you'll see that both in the Education Studies program and also in the Education Studies primary program. But just going on to the subject of placements as well. Basically, you would have thought, doing the primary education program, you are the only people who will be out doing placements. At QMU, that's not the case. If you're on the Education Studies program, you will also be out on placements. You will be out on community-based education experiences, community-based placements, as opposed to being out in schools. And I know already, speaking to many of our students, that they have found this hugely invaluable, just to see how things operate, not just within schools, but outside schools. So basically, in the first year, what happens is that every single one of you, whether you are a primary education student or an education studies student, does something called a community-based education experience, or what we call CBE. And it amounts to 5 days, and you go away and choose an organization that you would like to work for, a community-based organization, and you organize it yourself. We will be giving you a lot of guidance, tremendous amount of support, but you organize it yourself and you choose who you want to go and observe, to go and see how these community organizations work with children and young people and their families. They can be charities, they can be governments. So nobody actually goes into a school. There is no school placement as such in the first year. So it really gives you a good start, to understand how things work outside of school. Then in the second year, the education primary students will spend 4 weeks in a nursery, and then 6 weeks in primary 1 to 3 around May, June time. Then in the third year, primary students will spend 10 weeks in total, either in middle primary, so that would be primary 4 or 5, or upper primary, that's primary 6 or 7. And then in the fourth year, you spend 10 weeks again. But if you have spent in the third year, if you're in the middle primary, then in the fourth year, you will swap and you will be in a school in the upper primary. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you. So in total, if you are going to be a primary school teacher, you will have spent 30 weeks over the 4 years learning from school-based educators. Your mentors will be in school, and I can tell you that sort of experience is hugely invaluable as you progress across the 4 years. It really prepares you for becoming a teacher. Those of you who are doing the education studies program, you will be doing a lot of work out in community organizations as well. And this will probably take place in the semester between May and June. And then in the fourth year, Education studies students will have a quite large amount of time spent again in a community-based organization. The primary education students also do a community-based education at the end to round off your time on the program. So if you think about this, there is an awful lot of time spent, not just in university studying in your lecture theatres and in seminars, but you are out in schools or out in a charity or in a community-based organization for quite a lot of your time there. So it's quite hands-on in that sense. And everything that we do in the university, within the university, will support you when you're out on placement. And everything that you do when you're out on placement will then link back to whatever you have learned within the buildings of the university with us. So it's quite symbiotic, and they're both very closely related to one another. So we talked a lot about the education primary program. I'm a program leader for the education studies program. And in this program, it's basically what I've said here, it's an interdisciplinary social sciences degree. And what's that mean? So basically you're looking at education from a historical point of view. You're looking at education from a philosophical point of view, from the psychological point of view, from the sociological point of view. So you're really coming at it from very different perspectives. And we're hoping that by the end of the 4 years, you have an excellent grounding in what education is really all about, not just within primary schools, but in all sorts of different settings, adult education, community education. So I think, if I'm not wrong, there is perhaps no other program like it in Scotland. There are lots of education studies programs done in England, but in Scotland, I think we may be the only one, if I'm not wrong, that offers this kind of social science perspective. And we can look at the international perspective. We look at global health issues and how this impacts on learning and inequality, and how they each work towards, at times, disabling children's futures. We look at sustainable development. We look at the impact of such adversities like homelessness, poverty, neglect. And of course, we look at creativity and the natural environment for our mental and physical well-being. So that's basically a very broad idea of what the education studies program is about. And here are some of the course titles, and you can see what I was talking about, the different perspectives being brought into education. Here are some of the course titles: Introduction to Psychology. You will learn about early childhood learning in context. How do young children learn, for example? You'll learn about something called creativity, culture, and learning in the 21st century. So at QMU, we've got film specialists, we've got media specialists, we've got music specialists, we've got people who do art, music, and play therapy. And all of these people, we work with them to produce work for you in this particular module, which I think is one of the most exciting modules we have there. Education, race, and ethnicity. This is one that I will be teaching. And again, it's looking at promoting our understanding of what race actually is, what is ethnicity, what is race discrimination, and how that impacts children and young people, and also adults. And of course, one that's very close to our heart here at QMU, social justice, equality, and children's rights. This is a course in itself, but social justice, equality, and children's rights is the thread that runs through almost everything that we do at QMU on the education course. And then, of course, poverty and social exclusion, global health and international education, European social policy, and so on and so forth. So those are just some of the titles, some of the things. And again, these are not just taught by people who are strictly within education, but they're taught by psychologists and sociologists. So moving on. I think, if you're trying to decide where do you go to do an education course, I've taken some of the quotes to share with you. And she says here, the lecturers are fantastic. She's been very kind. They're also passionate about what they're teaching us, which makes the learning experience even better. She says that the university has a very relaxed and welcoming atmosphere, and lots of wonderful facilities. And we also have British Sign Language as a qualification. That's something you do in the first year, and I know that many of the students absolutely love this course. that we have fantastic program leaders and lecturers at QMU, very forward-thinking, lots of opportunities for students to actually engage with us and what they actually want as well. So there's a lot there that she's been very positive about. We wanted to come up with some reasons why you might want to come and join us. Things that are very special that you won't get anywhere else. And again, I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who's worked at other universities. So this is a small, welcoming, friendly campus. There are support teams across finance, counseling. If you have a disability, the university works very much for the best interest of students at QMU. All our lecturers are very experienced. We've already talked about that. They come from education, psychology, and sociology. There's a huge emphasis on digital learning and outdoor learning. There's a lot of fun. We have the Forest and Outdoor Learning Awards, so there are parts of the year when you will actually be outdoors for quite some time in forests and woods, doing all sorts of fun things. And again, I know that the students have been building bug hotels and have put these up on display. Chris is the one who's been amazing at creating all of these wonderful activities. And again, the students love it. And I mentioned the BSL. Again, students love having a qualification and being able to do sign language. We have a whole army of visiting lecturers and expertise from a range of third sector organizations and NGOs that come in and share their expertise with you. So it's not just all about us, telling you what to think about education. And then I mentioned the 30 weeks of professional placements. Not all university providers give 30 weeks, some are less. And of course, I'm really proud to work for a university that has consistently high student satisfaction rates. And this, again, all of this is on our website. So this is a time when you can, hopefully ask us some questions and we'll may be able to give you some good answers. Thank you for listening.
So in terms of the question and answer, I think Keith and I can just kind of take it in turns here, depending on the question. So Jen's asking, during the probation year, will students still receive support from the university in terms of advice and guidance? Obviously, we've not reached that point yet. However, we're not going anywhere. We're very much a team that works very closely with our students, both during their time at university, on placements, and going forward as well. We do have a postgraduate cohort who are coming up to the end of their year to do their postgraduate with us, and we know fine well we'll stay in touch with them, and they'll be coming back in to do things on the next course and things like that as well. So yes, I imagine we would definitely be available, and certainly we'd definitely be there for advice and guidance at any time. More than happy to do that.
Most of your support when you're out in the probation year is supported. You're supported by the General Teaching Council of Scotland, and you're also supported by the school that you have been placed into for that 1 year. But obviously, as you know, we're very open to give advice as well. Can previous CLD work experience qualify you for entry to second year without the agency qualification? The best people to speak to for anything to do with entry requirements is
admissions.
Yes, thank you. Anything to do with your grades, your previous qualifications, how to fill in the form, they will give you the best advice rather than us trying to second guess what would be best for your individual situation. So that would be my advice to anyone asking questions about their qualifications and their grades and things like that. Another one, how many people are normally on the course? 120, I think, on the primary education course.
Yeah.
And 25, I think, on the education studies course. 20 to 25. So I hope that answers your question. And then education studies course, can you go into the career routes some more? Yeah, sure. So the education studies course, like the primary course, is 4 years. But obviously, you're not going into schools to do placements. At the end of the 4 years, you can pretty much do anything with it. You can, if you want, go ahead and do a postgraduate degree in primary education, which is 1 year, and then go into primary education and work in schools if that's what you want. With this course, you could probably go and work, and you will be able to work in Scottish Government. You will be able to work in policy matters. You will be able to work for non-governmental organizations worldwide. A lot of charities and third sector organizations often want people who have an understanding of education and educational issues, and you could be working for them as well. So there's a whole gamut of people that would value your degree because, as I said, it touches on so many different aspects of life, but looking at it through an educational perspective. I hope that helps.
Rachel's asking, for the Education Studies course, can you do a postgrad in it? And if so, do you need to have a B in English? We don't currently do a postgraduate course in education studies. I'm not aware, I'm afraid, of it, who, if anyone does at this point in time, but certainly, again, it's the sort of thing. I can see underneath Laura has actually put up the email address to admissions, and they're wonderful. They are literally the oracle of everything to do with university entry and keeping you right and things. So if you do have any questions about admissions, things like that, we would encourage you strongly to email them. The reason we tend not to answer questions is sometimes things change. So, for example, with the primary course, the entry requirements are very much based around the GTCS requirements for registration as well. So we have to be very careful that that information that's provided is very, very up to date.
Great. There's a question here from Neve. How often are primary education students in a classroom a week? Ooh.
Neve, do you mean, are they in the lectures and seminars and things, or do you mean the actual school classrooms? In terms of the school classrooms, that's obviously varies depending on, oh, they go on campus. Brilliant. So going by this year, they tend to be on about 4 days a week. There tended to be a day that was not timetabled. However, that's kind of a situation because we're aware that a lot of students sometimes have part-time work and things, but it's quite a full-on course. There's a lot to do, so it's about trying to find a balance between having the right amount of input, having the right amount of time on campus for support, to work on the academic side of things, but also giving you the ability to kind of still have a bit of life and things like that as well. But at the moment, it tends to be 4 days where possible. Okay.
Yeah. Another really great question here, Eve. On the primary education program, are the placements based in Edinburgh? Okay, so this is your choice. When you fill in the form that tells the General Teaching Council of Scotland where you live, you can either tick the term time address, so that could be QMU halls, or you could tick your home address. So you could be living in Fife, for example, in which case the General Teaching Council will then assign, we don't assign schools, they do it. They will then assign you to a school that's within a 90-minute traveling time of whatever address it is you supply them. So the answer is they might be in Edinburgh, they could be in Fife, they could be anywhere based on the address that you supply them. I hope that helps.
So at the last slide, you can see we've put up our email addresses. So please feel free to email us if you think of any questions after this and in the coming weeks as well. You're more than welcome to get in touch. You can have a look at what we've been up to so far with the course on our education handle on Twitter. There's a few of us lecturers who update that as often as we can with things that are going on. So you can get a good view of some of the random stuff we've been up to. So for example, there's a few bits and pieces up there of some of the alternative things that we're doing on the course. Geetha mentioned about how we do the Forest and Outdoor Learning Award and British Sign Language Award within your first year as well. So that's 2 additional qualifications that you gain during your first year. So what we'll do is we'll wrap up there. And like I say, please feel free to get in contact with either myself or Geetha if you have any questions at all. We're always more than happy to answer questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.